Good evening and welcome to the Kim B. Davis Show. I'm your host, Kim B. Davis, and this evening we have one of our favorite guests. We have Dr. Angela Celeste May. She is going to talk to us about conservatism, control, and violence. But before we get to that, let me give her a proper introduction. We have Dr. Angela Celeste May. We know her as our clinical, our organizational, and our forensically trained psychologist. She is the president and co-founder of A.M. and Associates Incorporated. She is the president and founder of Celeste Productions Incorporated. She is the immediate past president of the Michigan Psychological Association Foundation Board. She is also, if that wasn't enough for you, she's also an author and a musician, and she is currently a trustee of the Michigan Health Council. Good evening, Dr. Angie. How are you?
Good evening. Excuse me. Oh my gosh, let me start over again. Me. Good evening. I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Thank you.
Good. Thank you for being here, Dr. Angie. So let's get right to it. So we were just talking a little bit about, before we got on the show, about the January 6th committee hearings that we heard yesterday with the allegations, or the assertion, should I say, that Cassidy Hutchinson made. And we are, what's today? Today is Wednesday. So we're about 5 days out from the Roe v. Wade being overturned. There have been some court cases also that have come out of the Supreme Court that have said that you cannot sue a police officer. So if a police officer does not Mirandize you, that's not necessarily against the law. It has to go through the court, and then the court would have to throw the statements out. You have electoral maps that are being rewritten. You have conservative, theocratic, and that means religion, laws that are being placed on the books. For example, as soon as Roe v. Wade was announced that it was overturned by the Supreme Court, trigger laws went into place in many, many states where women were not allowed access to abortion services, and were told because it is deemed by God. A lot of people will say that there has been this conservatism thread throughout the nation. We've heard it in 2016. We need to make our country great again. And it became the mega crowd, people, whatever, the group. And they kept saying, we need to take America back to the 50s. And I kept thinking, the 50s? Well, wait, Black people, we couldn't live where we wanted to live. We couldn't go where we wanted to go to school. We couldn't go and get the types of jobs that we have now. If you wanted to be a psychologist, as you are, you would have had to fight for that. If I wanted to have a podcast, there was no mechanism in place for me to do this the way that I do it. We weren't even allowed to vote. We were still going through poll taxes and exams and risking our very lives to even step foot, to even ask. And I said, ask. I want to vote. May I vote?
Which is our innate right, because we are Americans.
Exactly.
And shouldn't have to ask.
Shouldn't have to ask. But people keep talking about it, and people keep saying, well, we need to have conservative values. This is a godly country, and we need to get back to our roots. So, Dr. Angie, I've studied a little bit of American history, and many of our American founders were what they call themselves deists, D-E-I-S-T, for those that don't know what that word. A deist is a person who believes in a supreme being, but not necessarily in the way that we practice, which essentially means this is somebody who may believe in a God, or, the universe. I believe in God. I don't necessarily call him by a specific name, but I don't go to church. I don't do any of the organized things that you see people do in worship. I can go in my backyard and talk to God. That's what they'll tell you, and be in nature and talk to God and believe that they have a relationship. I'm not negating that or knocking it or tearing it down. I'm simply stating that that's what deists believe. And many of our founding fathers, quote unquote, who are lauded as creating the Constitution, believed in that. Having said all of that, Dr. Angie, talk to us about where we see conservatism today and some of the things that are coming out of it, and how we contrast that against what some of the founding fathers were thinking.
Is that not the proper first response?
Because I gave you a lot. I gave you a lot.
No, not because of you. It's because you're laying out the fact that there is a lot. That there's this a lot. Okay, so first of all, because it's really it's a socio-political / psychological question, but we all in a republic, in a democracy, sometimes we forget that we all have a responsibility. So we all need to be somewhat politically aware. We all need, it's our response. Okay, so the first thing is, when I think about conservatism, because like you said, people are smart, conservative, and conservatism is growing in nations around the world and everything. I think of it in terms of when people say conservative values, what they're usually alluding to are, for lack of a better term, family values. Kind of like, hate to use that term. I shouldn't say I don't hate to use the term. I know the term has been misused. I'll put it that way. Yes, but yes. that idea of, I think, think of that idea of having a certain order or having order, period, order as compared to chaos. I think a lot of times liberalism is construed as a chaotic state. That conservative means that you have high values and integrity and morals as understood and as manifested in certain ways. So you are polite to each other. You don't just say, anything that you want to say in people's face. There are mores, cultural mores, and societal things, rules by which we adhere. We're supposed to wear clothes so we don't walk down the street with our breeches. There are laws against walking around your underwear.
Yes, there are.
And that's usually where my mind goes. Secondly, it's first the way we think of conservatism, and then the way it's actually acted out. Because I think what you're not saying is that there is a hypocrisy that we've seen in the use of the idea and the term. And the way it's used as a bludgeon, so to speak. So a lot of people have been in the habit and raised with what they consider conservative ideas, and in our communities, our culture, our society, at least here in the United States, in the West, Christian values. So what are Christian values? It's very interesting because the Old Testament talks about many, the rules and the regulations for societal regulations, etc., because people were running amok. Let's face facts. God didn't come here for no reason. So very all true. Of that, and people, I feel make the mistake of acting as though Jesus in the New Testament ushered in love. God displayed a great deal of love in the Old Testament because he was really protecting the people from their own idea. All of it. So many of those rules may have seemed oppressive, but they were ways to help people not just destroy themselves, as people are wont to do. So conservatism, as we think of it in how we treat each other and rules and regulations and all that, that's one thing. Conservatism, as the way it's played out, is taking Christian ideas and cherry picking some of those Christian ideas that help prop up certain people and certain class and certain perhaps racial and ethnic, background and all, and et cetera. So true, I say not true, but I would say, I think that there's a such thing as a healthy conservatism. I don't think that everyone should, I don't think it's healthy to just be able to treat each other just in your kind of way, abuse whoever you want, and leave me alone, and all of the rest. I think that the rules and regulations, just like we teach our kids, certain rules and regulations and discipline actually frees you to be able to do certain things because you brush your teeth, you wash your face, you have a routine that actually helps order your, get you off to a good start. And there are healthy aspects to that. So I think that there can, like with anything, not anything, but with many things, there can be a healthy way to do that. to have, to live with some conservatism. The unhealthy way, and in my profession in psychology, we're really, as an entity, we're trying to do a better job of not superimposing our individual ideas of healthy and unhealthy onto the people for whom we work, which I totally agree with. So I will say, in parentheses, from my perspective, what I would say is healthy. And even from the field's perspective, if something is harming a person, then we would agree that that's usually not healthy. So when I say, healthy, the unhealthy versions of conservatism is what, because I did a little research too. I was looking at what John Gray wrote. We're always, digging into the history, right? And I'm reading this a little bit here because I wanted to get this the word for word. And this is what I think of as more of the unhealthy version and what we're seeing play out in our society. Most commentators, this is partly from John Gray, but this initial part, most commentators regard conservatism as a modern political philosophy, even though it exhibits the standpoint of paternalism or authority rather than freedom. And then John Gray went on to basically, in this article, talks about how really it's not a new concept. None of this is a new concept, and that conservatism is being lived, not, and they even say in this particular article, not based on what works, but based on history. Yes. So to your point, back in the 50s, well, this is how it used to be. It used to be this way, and let's go back to this way. Well, there were things about that way that didn't work. E.g., what you just said. Well, there's a whole group of folks who couldn't vote, who couldn't live where they wanted to live, who didn't have certain freedoms, etc. So this idea of authority rather than freedom is what I would say is where we are around the world in the places where there's increasing conservatism, regardless of the religious background, where it's conservatism is synonymous with greater authority over certain individuals and groups, and that includes over women, and less freedoms. And last thing I'll say is what's interesting is that Christian conservatism in this country, particularly in our country in America, takes on the mantle of being, how can I say, Christian conservatism is being preached and taught as the true Christianity and what it really, should look like. I find it interesting that it leaves out the teachings of the person upon whom the word Christian is based. Yes. And that is Christ. Yes. So they're taking a lot of the rule-based things from the Old Testament, which is a part of God's love, because when Jesus came, he didn't just throw out all the rules. No. He was a devout Jewish man. He honored the Sabbaths, all of those kinds of things. What he said was, you all have become so pious and pompous in your way of doing it that you're leaving out people who matter, which are all the people I've created. Yes. You're leaving out certain classes of people. And so this current conservatism, Christian or not, is leaving out the love. It's just leaving out the love. And when the love goes out of the window, we start abusing folks and putting the abuse into law. Yes. So, great. That is a great response, Dr. Angie. So I want to dial down on to something you said. You talked about authority versus freedom. And oftentimes when we see people take authority, I'm going to take this down to a family unit. Parent has a child who may be going through a season in their life where they are out of control. Oh my goodness, Johnny won't stop talking at school. Johnny can't sit down. Johnny is up all night. Okay, so then the parents have a conversation. They're like, okay, we got to get strict. We got to get control
over this child.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of that, from a parent perspective, is because you fear what will happen if you don't get that child under control, because they have to listen. I need my child to listen in class so they can get the lesson, but two, so they can understand this is how we act in society. And I say this because I went through this with my son. We're in 7th grade. It was a transition. He was talking and I kept telling him, that's your superpower. But you have to mute that right now. This is not the time that you use that. You know, it's like the meme on social media for all little girls who were told that they were bossy, keep leading the way. And I was always told I was bossy. And I told him, I said, that's your superpower. I said, but here's the problem. I said, we live in 2022 America. You're out and a police officer stops you. And you start trying to explain, and you come across one of these police officers that wants to hurt you. He's going to hurt you because you don't know how to be quiet. So out of fear, my husband and I said, we have to control our son. A lot of times I hear the same type of thought process from leaders. Oh my goodness, women are having abortions. 60 million children have been killed, according to A Right to Life, I believe it is. Mm-hmm. Other people, there was a rally a couple of days ago where a woman stood next to Donald Trump at a mega Make America Great Again rally and said that today is a victory for white lives. And so we hear this. We've also heard for the last few years, America is going to become a brown country in, what is it, 2042, 2044?
Yeah, by 2050 for sure, majority
yes.
brown.
Yes.
And it's already becoming, yeah.
Exactly. And for years, we've had the immigration debate. Oh, we can't let all these people in, you know, they're thieves, they're liars, and then, you know, the terrible countries, but we didn't use that word. You know, we want people from good countries. Well, quote unquote, the good countries are countries that are stable, like Switzerland and Sweden and England and France. You don't have people fleeing war in France because there is no war in France. Mm-hmm. Those people have jobs and strong economies. Other countries which have been destabilized by policies, global policies from all different countries, not just the United States, are fleeing violence, drugs, human trafficking, all kinds of things. But America says, well, we no longer want you. You need to go back and fix your own country. Dr. Angie, talk about how fear leads to control, because I see fear in our authoritarianism rearing its head. And I use that word because this is how dictators rise to power in quote unquote third world countries. When we see a country overseas and we see a dictator rise, and we see things like this where we start to make very restrictive laws and restrict certain segments of the population to try to rein in control.
Yeah. Fear is a huge part of that. You hit that right on the head. It's interesting from a psychological perspective. If you take, sometimes I like to look at societal things through the lens of an individual, because sometimes I think that can lend clarity sometimes. So if we take, just like you described, what's going on in our country and others that are clamping down with more and more restrictive laws out of fear, like you said. So if you think of a single individual who over time, let's say that single individual is working in an office. And in the 1950s, the office was predominantly white, like this single individual. And in the 1960s, we had our modern civil rights movement, and more barriers were broken, and they started to have maybe one person of color came to work in this office, maybe two. And that individual might be a little uncomfortable maybe, but they're like, okay, well, we can see if this will work. That's fine. We want to be welcoming and that's open arms. Isn't that great? Wonderful. I can learn blah, blah, blah from this person's background and I can grow as a person. And then over time, you have maybe the two people of color were Black and maybe they were both male, or a Black secretary and a male worker, whatever the case. And then as time goes on, you're in the 70s and our modern women's movement. So we not only have more women, and I'll pause to say, we know Black women have always been in the workforce.
Yes.
When were we not?
You're right.
When did that happen? So in the 70s, you have perhaps more women coming into that office and into the 80s, et cetera. So now what's happening in the 90s and around 2000 with that. And I didn't say who this person was, but we'll just say that this is a white gentleman, perhaps. We say it's a white American gentleman. So, and now the person is living and working in an environment that is increasingly changing in terms of the diversity, those who are coming in the doors, et cetera, different backgrounds and all of that. And they were comfortable at first when it was one or two. But now, as we have not only a more diverse workforce in that office and fewer people who that person thinks, in his own mind, look like me, quote unquote. And on top of that, the company's projections by the higher ups is that by, 20 whatever, it'll be predominantly run by people who don't look like this gentleman.
Exactly.
So now that person might, if it's a single individual, start to feel a little uncomfortable, more uncomfortable than a little, been feeling a little uncomfortable for a while. But now the reason that his anxiety has increased is because he's seeing it now. It's one thing to read the projections on a sheet of paper, on a readout, on something that's been printed, but now he's seeing it around him. And now his boss is a Black woman. And now the new CEO is an Indian, a gentleman, or whatever the case, right? So now, where's this increased anxiety coming from? The person's feeling threatened.
Yes.
Why? Your job is secure. You're not going to lose your job. You're not going to lose, so what are you threatened by? Positions of power. And what's interesting is you can have competitiveness with whomever. Maybe they're another white gentleman, it could be competitive. But for some reason, if it's someone who doesn't look quite like I look, when they're coming into power, it's either them or me. We can't both. We can't both rise in this company. We can't both rise in society. So the fear, if I think of an individual in psychological terms, we might say one of the reasons for trying to increase control is it happens when anyone is feeling greater anxiety, because when you have greater anxiety, you feel like that you're not in control. And we're nervous when we're not in control because we can't predict what's about to happen or what's going to come next. And we're not sure about not only our place in this place we're in, what is our place, what is our role, but then also our identity. Our identity is wrapped around how we define ourselves, the positions that we play, the roles that we're in, how we have ideas, and this is a human tendency. We have ideas about how we interact with different ones. Well, if you bring different ones in, I'm not sure how to interact. So all of that could, and so a greater anxiety, the more that increases, a person can develop an anxiety disorder. There are several anxiety disorders. So the two places in terms of individuals, the two situations in which you see the most need for control, if you're going to give a psychological diagnosis, are people with personality disorders and people who have, no, that's funny, and people who have a different anxiety disorders. So that the more unstable I feel, the more I have to try to exercise control. Control over myself? No, control over the environment. And in this case, the environment often might mean other people.
Yes.
Over other people's bodies. So if we pull the lens back to societally speaking, does this mean that everyone who is trying to exert control has an anxiety disorder or personality disorder? No, it does not. However, anxiety does exist. because of fear and feeling threatened that I'm going to lose my place of control. And also from the personality disorder. So there are different personality disorders. The one that I think most people are familiar with is narcissism. Yes. Narcissistic personality disorder. Now, you don't have to have a narcissistic personality disorder in order to try to exercise control over other people, but there can be elements of that disorder. So when we think of narcissist, when you think of a narcissist, what do you think of? How you define it?
So to me, a narcissist is someone who is self-involved, only cares about himself. If you bring him a situation and say, oh, Jimmy, I didn't like what you said in the meeting, then he turns it around and makes it all about him and turns you into the villain. And you're like, but wait, I came in here to say what you said, right, Jimmy. Now all of a sudden I feel bad that I even brought it up. And so now I'm never going to come back and say anything to you, because now you sort of given me a guilt complex in the workplace. Self-involved, everything is about them, needs to have control.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yeah. And other aspects too, but those are key. Those are the key ones that we think about. So, like I said, you don't have to have a narcissistic personality disorder, but elements of what you just described that need to control, it's very self-involved. It's all about me because I'm the one who's threatened. Yes. So what's very interesting is when you use the analogy of you and your husband, trying to, we got to get control of our son. What you did was a very therapeutic way of doing it. You didn't just, slam down some rules. You spoke to your son. You explained it to your son. You talked about how this could be damaging to him if he doesn't. And then on top of that, you said it, which I love, you said it in the language of his culture, the language of his people. That's your superpower, which I love that. I love it so much. It is a superpower. And you said it, in those terms for a reason. All of that is what you don't do when you're a narcissist, because you're not thinking of how the other person views it. You're not thinking of the other person at all. You're not trying to help the other person understand anything, because there is no other person. It's all about me. And exactly. So this is what we're seeing. And these increasing, like you said, the redrawing of the maps to make it harder to vote, the trying to make sure only certain people have access to the ballot box, the increasing restrictive laws, all of those things are not being done, where they're inviting these people into the room to have a discussion, like the way you did with your son, to say, well, what would be the best of whatever. It's not that kind of dance. It's not that kind of balancing act. It's, I'm threatened. We need to get control of this and bring it back. As an individual, the narcissist bringing it back to me. As a group of people, we need to bring it back to 1952 when it's all about us. We had control and we were on top and we were running things. I, me, my, we. Or like my grandmother used to say, it's all about I, me, and mine. Selfish. I, me, and mine. So it is definitely a dangerous time, and we need to call it. We need to call it for what it is. We need to call these things for what they are. Multiple attempts to wrest control and power, because people who don't look like people are on the verge, so it seems, of what people think is wresting that power and control from them. Yeah. No, one other thing I will say about oftentimes with personality disorders, any personality disorder, they tend to be very rigid. It's either this or that. They don't have that healthy again, kind of like ability to have some fluidity or flexibility. So again, with the same conversation, it is a narcissistic way of thinking, because it's not inviting people into the room. I'm feeling threatened by you. I'm feeling threatened by you all. Come into the room so we can, address this and look each other in the eye and talk about it. And how can we, there's no we, so they're either or, I'm on top or you are, and I'm going to be on top.
Absolutely. So I want to continue with that thread, because that was a great explanation. I was going to give you a pop cultural reference. So one of my favorite movies that I use to uplift me when I'm down, and it's stupid. It is absolutely stupid. It's dumb, but it's Will Ferrell in Talladega Nights. And there's a saying in that movie, yes, if you're not first, you last. And so whenever my kids do something, I always say that. And they look at me, they're like, Mommy, we gonna have to change your movie watching. You and Daddy, y'all just something wrong with you. But and that is a comedy. It's a funny movie. If you just have nothing to do and you don't want to think and you just want to watch something that's gonna make you laugh, because you're like, that's dumb. Nobody would do that. But then you start looking around and you're like, oh yeah, we kind of sort of do see that. It's funny. But going along with that thread that you just gave, we heard this during President Obama's 2 terms. We have a global economy. It always frustrates me when I hear people talking about coal. And I'm not picking on any community that relies on coal. However, we have study after study after study after study that talks about the dangers of coal mining. We've seen coal miners, excuse me. We've seen coal miners get trapped, had to be rescued from wherever they were. Some have died, some have not. And oftentimes when you were talking about, you gave that great analogy of that worker, that white male who's been at that business, in the 50s, everybody looked like him. It made sense. And then we started to have different movements, different people started to come in, and now things have changed, especially if that person has not moved up in rank. If they've sort of become stagnant, it becomes even more so. Or they only got so far because the people that are coming in have more education or more diverse experiences and backgrounds that lend to being in a leadership role. I will hear people say, I want to live like my grandparents did. My grandparents could live on one income and they raised 7 children and everybody, we were happy. That was a long time ago. Things have changed. We now live in a global economy. What happens in China affects the United States. What happens in Russia? We see it now with Russia, Ukraine. What's happening over there is having a ripple effect around the world. And the reason why I wanted to start with this, Dr. Angie, is because we hear a lot of these mass shooters. We've had 200 plus mass shootings in the United States. And some of these people have been people who are angry at Black people, specifically the shooter in Tops in Buffalo, New York. He specifically intended to hurt Black people because he believed that we needed to be gone. We did not deserve to be alive. Talk about the dangers of everything that we're talking about, this conservatism thread, how we cherry pick and we want to control out of fear because we feel threatened, and how that leads to violence and what we're seeing today.
It's very, very dangerous because, it's dangerous if it's an isolated situation. If it was just one, it's dangerous. It's extremely dangerous right now because there's less and less agreement. And as everyone has been talking about, and our country is uniquely sick with this thing, because we have other countries that we compare ourselves to who have similar economies, so, and like you said, we don't try not to use that first and third world language and all of that. But maybe we could say some more developed, less developed countries, but other countries who are similar to ours as far as their, like I said, their economy, the fact that maybe some type of democracy, people run, etc. And I know you heard the numbers compared to these other countries, the number of guns that are in our population, even the number of people who are in our prison system. We have this addiction to violence, and it is very, very dangerous because, number one, first and foremost, it is in the DNA. And I don't mean the biological DNA, but I mean, it's in the philosophical DNA. Did I just coin a term? Philosophical DNA.
You did. I got to use that.
I think that I did.
Well, Dr. Angie, guys. Cool. Dr. Angie.
In the philosophical DNA of America. Violence, and again, it's that going back to that original idea of taking cherry picking aspects of Christianity and weaving that into the folklore and the ways in which we perceive what is good and what strength looks like. So in our country, and when I say ours, I always try to put parentheses around this version of this country in these last couple hundred years, because we know this country's been around for a long time, way before 16. Anyway, so yes. This current version of the United States of America, the founding of it, very, very, as with a lot of countries, very, very bloody. But it didn't just start with that. There's just a long history and deep cultural ties to one of the ways we get things done. One of the chief ways we get things done is with violence. We get people moved with violence. We get things solved with violence, and we show our strength through violence. That's a broad statement. It doesn't mean that's every single person's idea, but it's such a cultural norm for so long in this country. If I have not been yet, I don't know if I would have to get myself together to visit the monument for the lynchings.
Yes, I have not.
Yeah, I'm so glad that they did that. That whole exhibit. But again, we got to deal with these. We need to deal with these problem people. So let's just burn them. Let's just hang them. Let's just, it's just a very violent way of getting things done. And it's not getting things done, but way of trying to get, something accomplished. So that's like in our cultural DNA as a country. And then you introduce these automatic weapons and more sophisticated ways of creating violence. And it's a challenge that at times, I think as a country, we've done a better job. Certain times we've done a better job than other times at meeting that challenge, because for several years, for your viewers who may not be aware of this, we did have a ban on assault weapons that was in place for a number of years. And we didn't see, we still had issues. There were mass shootings, but we didn't see like we're seeing now. The ban has expired, and we have quite a few people in Congress, and, the two parties that we have in this country, there are gun owners on both sides, Republicans, Democrats, gun owners, and all over the place. But more so on the Republican side, just to say it like it is, more so on the Republican side, that has been where gun reform has stalled. More so by Republicans stopping it, because of this cultural determination that we want to keep, we want to satisfy our constituents who don't want any issue on their guns. They want complete freedom to do everything that they want violently and everything. There's also the money part, because selling guns lines certain people's pockets. There's that. Yes, absolutely. But so all of that's already there. It's already there, and therefore dangerous. What makes it more dangerous now is that as the country is splintering and we have a greater and greater gaps between how citizens view things, that makes it even more dangerous, because we're not, unlike several years ago, we're not getting a unified voice from our representatives for the most part that agree that certain things need to be done to protect our citizens, protect our kids. We're not hearing that.
Right.
We're hearing different voices from leadership on that. And that makes it even more dangerous. So it's not now, but it's more normalized than ever. The open carry laws now, in different, I think New York was the latest one in different states where you can just,
Mm-hmm.
carry your guns and all this. And it's happening at the exact same time that we finally did get some real movement that finally came out of a bipartisan, agreement of our government to put some limits on carrying weapons and stuff like that. But it is extremely dangerous because psychologically, life begins to have less meaning as far as the preciousness of it. And unfortunately, that's not new, but that's just seems to be becoming even more prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think people are consciously thinking of it like that. They're not trying to consciously say, oh, life doesn't mean anything. Their lives mean something. When I say life,
Right.
Preciousness of life, right? I don't think that's a conscious thought per se, but that's kind of like what it comes down to, because for many people, the conscious thought, again, let's go back to that narcissistic theme. There's a narcissistic theme that is not just in the leadership, not our current leadership, but I mean in the leaders that we have in society.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a narcissistic theme throughout the citizenry of this country. Again, it's a theme. It's not everyone, where it's me and mine first. I want to do what I want. And under that, then they're not saying it overtly. A lot of these people, I think, would be just horrified if someone told them that you don't care about people's lives. I don't think that's a conscious thing. But if it's me first, and I'm going to take my guns wherever I want and use them when I feel like it, underneath that is, and so therefore, other people's lives, other children's lives are secondary to my right, So normalizing the violence, normalizing guns as a solution and violence as a solution, not having leadership that across, we have some leaders who push back for sure, but not having a consistent voice from leadership to not only push back on that, but we have leaders who are championing a more violent approach to things. All of that makes it even more dangerous. Even more dangerous. And what people don't understand is it's like anything else. We have a symbiotic relationship with each other. We impact each other. And that callousness harms the individual who has a narcissistic approach. It harms that person as much as it harms the others around them. So we're not living on an isolated island, each person on their own isolated island. If it's dangerous because it endangers everyone. If any one group is endangered, we're all in danger. Exactly. In this case, all the groups are endangered.
Yes.
Because of this callousness of what I want to do supersedes the needs of the whole group. So yeah, it's.
And that's a great explanation and a great analogy. I would even take it to biblical, where we talk in the Bible, where Jesus says we are one body, but the body has many members.
That's true.
When you look at a human body, you have two arms, you have two legs, you have two eyes, you have two ears, you have a mouth, you have a nose. Everyone is important, yet they can't function without the other. So as you said, there is a symbiotic relationship, and this country is very much the same. We need every group of people that we have in this nation to help this nation to run. And for people to strike back and say, oh, we need to get rid of those people because they're the problem. No, that's not quite the problem. That's your fear talking.
Exactly. And that not only is that not the problem, but that person or those groups that you think you need to get rid of or downplay or re-enslave or whatever it is you think you're trying to do, as you've said at other times, that could be the person who has the answer to the disease that you are trying to solve or whatever. You never know. A couple of things I just want to throw out. One is there was a point that my husband made, which I thought was an excellent point, that I haven't heard anyone put it quite this way. I just want to go back to the whole abortion thing. Whether you have, whether you lean less towards abortion or you think abortion only in certain circumstances, or whether you're right to life or whatever the issue is, the personal feelings of each individual in terms of passing laws where this is concerned and taking it back to biblical again, there are a lot of things that we do that God may not be pleased with. You know, we have a tendency to tell ourselves that God is on board with just everything we do.
Yes, we do.
There's a lot that he is not happy with. But if God himself gives us choice.
Yes. Amen. Say it, Dr. Angie.
That's the issue. That's it. Because I mean, me personally, I'm definitely a Democrat, lean North Democrat, but I'm not the most liberal person in the whole wide world. This is totally my own personal, idea that abortion is important for care of the mother and things that happen all of the rest. And it's a choice that needs to be there. And I believe it should be a decision between, personal decision. Everyone always says between the mother and her doctor, which I totally agree with. I personally, I have personal Christian concerns about the overuse and abuse of abortion as as birth control. Almost, yes. Really, So I have my own concerns about things about that, like that. But like the man said, that doesn't mean that people shouldn't have the choice. Yes. Because God gives, God gives a choice. And the only other thing I was just going to say is that because we always go back to tying things, biblically, there's so many ways, but one of the ways that, we talk about conservatism, and in our country, Christian conservatism kind of goes hand in hand as, they cherry pick and use things. There's that on the liberal side as well. There's a version of that on the more liberal side as well, where about a lot of different things, where they talk about Jesus as a figure of love, which he is. Absolutely, he is. And then many people do talk about how Jesus, he purposely spent time with the outcasts of society, but he did all of that. On the liberal side, people tend to use that as an example that, well, if Jesus is okay with everything we're doing, why aren't you? He ain't said that.
He didn't say that.
He said, quote, go and sin no more. He didn't say, y'all all right, keep doing what you do. That's not what he said. He said, I love every one of you. I'm trying to model the behavior. Stop treating them as outcasts. You should love them too. But turning to them, okay, if you are doing blah, blah, go and sin no more. I love you, but I want you to stop because this is harming your soul. It's harming, you can get yourself in trouble. So it can be
love the person, hate the sin. He never said that you should hate anybody for whatever it is that they do. You're only supposed to hate the sin.
Exactly. And loving, just like with the kids, just like with our kids. When you discipline, that actually is an act of love. It is an act of love to discipline. It doesn't mean that you don't. So people will take that and act like, well, God loves me. And so therefore, whatever I want to do, all right. Like Jesus is in our club.
Yeah.
He's okay with whatever it is.
It's like the people who say, well, if Jesus was around today, he would be riding in the Escalade and have security. I'm like, okay.
I don't know what he'd have. Actually, he was born
in a manger. Yes.
Have you actually? Have you been to Jerusalem?
No, I haven't. Tell me.
Been to Jerusalem? Oh wow! My mom put together.
It's on my bucket list. Bucket list. I want to go.
Yes, it's wonderful. We did this following the footsteps of the New Testament and everything, and saw and stood where the remainders of the manger, which really was a cave. It was just like a cave. So we've got the cave. We've got him riding in a donkey. He had no place to lay his head. When he traveled, whatever. So where's the Escalade?
Right. And half the time, everywhere he went, everybody was on him. I mean, we could talk about the woman with blood, if I just touch him. And he's like, who touched me? Because I just felt energy, come out of me. But he's like, your faith has healed you. Or he's going to his father's house and you got the beggars and the lepers and all these people sitting outside while
Yeah.
you have the Pharisees sitting up there talking about something, well, you know, we're all holy and we prepared the house of worship for you. And here it is. He's like, but you got all these people out here, but you in here making all this money in here.
Exactly.
What,
and yeah, exactly. I was saying one of the things I remind people about too is, you know, if it comes up in conversation is, you know, the people, because we have it so backwards, of course, the people that he felt some of those whom he felt the most sorry for are the ones who had all that money.
Yes.
Like he wasn't thinking like people are thinking. He's like that. He was like, oh, I feel so sorry for you because you're gonna have a harder time. You're gonna have a harder time.
Remember the wealthy man? He said,
yeah,
when he asked him, he said, well, what do I need? He says, let all your stuff go and come and follow me. And he was like, but
like, oh, dang.
I have Egyptian goose down comforters and I have silk sheets and I love coffee. I have every coffee machine in the world and I get to wake up to the greatest brew of coffee in the morning and I have all of this and you want me to be poor and follow you?
And that's what he heard, be poor.
Yes.
That's
and what and one last thing, what does Jesus say? Jesus says you will always have the poor with you. But you won't always have me with you. And I always tell people that when they say, well, and I'm like, the poverty is not an affliction. That's a man-made construct.
Yeah. Yeah.
What did Jesus say? He said to take care of the widows, the fatherless children. We've got lots of children in the foster care system right now. All these people talking about, well, we need to stop. I said, I understand where you want to go with that. I understand. I don't necessarily agree with the way that you're going about it. But what are you doing for the children that are already here?
Exactly.
These children end up in all kinds of devastating situations. They end up in the prison pipeline. They end up being victims of abuse. They become generational repeaters of the same trauma that they went through. How are we fixing this?
Exactly. Yeah. How are we fixing it? And for those who are in it and for children to come. Yeah, absolutely.
I think Jesus would have a lot to say. So I'm going to let him say it when he comes back. I just know I'll be somewhere listening for my name. Like, Jesus, is that you? All right, let's go. Because I'm tired of these people, Father. They not nice, God. You need to come get us. But last question, Dr. Angie, and thank you so much because you have given us so much information. As citizens and voters, how can we protect ourselves mentally while we discuss issues like this, while we go through things like this, to make sure that we keep ourselves strong mentally?
Oh, wonderful, wonderful question. Lots of things we can do. Some things are universal. I think that really help, any person. And then some things are, specific to what works for you. So starting with the more general things, we have bodies. So if you have difficulty with some of your ability, if you are disabled in some way, and you're not able to do all of the moving that you would like to do, still universally getting outside, getting some fresh air a little bit, any movement that you can do. If somebody, if you're wheelchair bound or whatever the case, and you're able to have someone help you get outside. So fresh air, moving your body a little bit, all of those things help to create, those positive chemicals, the endorphins in the brain to lift the mood. And they do, that really does a lot. It does a lot of different things. The fresh air, a little bit of sunshine, some regular movement. Because one of the things that it does, it helps us physically, of course. And the healthier you are, the more you can take care of your health to the best of your ability, the better able we all are to withstand stressors. So it goes hand in hand. Another thing that movement and fresh air can really help with, and that is it helps to increase feelings of not autonomy so much. What's the word I'm looking for? Where you have agency over your own body. And that's for the physical part, but we also can use that for lots of different things. So if you make lists, or if you have a couple things on your list that you know you need to do or you're trying to get to, even just a few minutes touching that, doing a little writing, practicing your violin for 5 minutes or so, just touching on some things you need to do that maybe you haven't gotten to. If it's cleaning up, I've got all this to clean up, like my mom used to say, just start with one, pick that one piece of paper up. And so touching on some things that you need to do, even if you can't get it done. Again, it helps you feel your move, a feeling of forward movement, helps you feel you're getting some things done. And again, it reminds you have control of some things. It reminds you that you have some agency over your body, your health, your environment. So all of that is cumulative, and reminding us and helping us with a day-to-day living with stressors. So those are some things that we can do. I always go back to history, of course. I always say, like people say, it's important to know our history so we know where we're going. Things look very precarious in our country. It is true, and it can be very frustrating. It can be very scary. But looking to history for the ways in which people in recent history, and then, go back as far back as you want to go, where remind yourself of the things that people did and that they were able to prevail, and that these kinds of situations, and they seem new, but in many ways they're really not new. And looking at the things that people have done to try and climb out of that. And one last thing I'll say about universal things, for all of us. Fortunately, in our country at this time, there are so many organizations. Oh my goodness, there's all kinds of organizations that help groups and people, help people vote, help people get registered. There's so many things you can join. If you can contribute $5, or if you can, volunteer, it does more than just help you feel like you're doing something. You really are doing something to help the cause, help things move forward in terms of, again, voting, getting literature out there, supporting candidates that you really feel good about, calling your Congress, all of those things. A wonderful thing about our republic is still, every single one of us has a voice. And you can dial and call your congressperson's office or whatever, email, whatever. So getting involved in whatever ways that make sense for you politically. And then also, last thing I'll say is getting involved in other ways just to help your community be better. There's so many groups for all kinds of different, things, wherever your interests may lie. So that you are a part of the solution, that you're doing some things as part of the solution. So those are all things I think we could all find ways of doing. And then individually, everybody is not a writer like that, and I don't mean talent with writing, but I'm not thrilled about writing. But if you do like to write, always encourage people to journal, or just get a notebook and write your feelings down, get some of that stress out. And also, it not only just gets stress out, but as we write our ideas and our frustrations and whatever you want to write down, so many times, I know you know this, Kim, we begin to see solutions and some answers in those writings that we didn't realize that we had, as writing. It's like, well, what do I write about? Just write your feelings. It doesn't have to be pretty, it doesn't have to be cute, just splat, just put it down there. If you're not much of a writer, great thing about writing is that you can go back and look at it later. Talking it out, whether it's formal therapy or just someone that you're close with that can trust, talk about your feelings. Again, that whole process of talking things through with people, just talk about your feelings and frustrations. It can help you feel so much better. If you're with someone that you trust, that you feel who validates your feelings, and again, same thing, a lot of times you can get some really good answers for yourself to help protect your mental health. As you talk things through it and stay in contact with what works for you. So writing stuff out, talking things out, it may be counseling therapy, it may not. And always helping other people, doing something, my family's all about that. Do something for somebody else. Not yourself.
Don't be a narcissist. Don't be a narcissist.
Do something for somebody else. Even if it's just going and visiting someone who can't get out or sick and shut in, or, I tell you this little story. I love this. I was going shopping at Target. I was going to Target.
Red Circle Boutique. Yes.
I love that so much. Never in my life have I heard that term. I've got it. I'm taking that now. I love it. I love it. And there was a lady, and I think she was a lady of a certain age. And she had this beautiful, deep brown skin. And she had on this gorgeous white, bright white, crisp little shorts outfit. She looked so cute. And was her hair green or purple? I don't remember. I think it was purple.
Okay.
And it was locks. It was purple. And every time she turned her head, that little fluffy hair just, and I just had to stop her. I said, I love your hair. I love your hair so much. And she just beamed. And she was posing. She said, well, I told her, you look like summertime. You really do. And she was just beaming. And she did. She was just beautiful to me. She was just gorgeous. And doing that is so important too. Lifting each other up. She's a total stranger. I'll probably never see her again. That made her whole day. And that made my day to tell her that, I love doing that for people. I love it. I'll you gotta be careful. You don't want to come across the wrong way with certain guys, but I'll say the same thing to guys, whatever. Look at chicken, blah, blah, and he'll feel good about it. So getting up out of our narcissism and doing something for somebody else sometimes just means passing them with a positive word and telling them how fantastic they are. If it's just nothing else, that's a wonderful spiritual, emotional, and psychological lift. And you can't not smile for at least the next 20 minutes after that. So.
Excellent, Dr. Angie. Thank you. Thank you for ending on that very powerful and positive note. Thank you for coming on and talking to us about conservatism, control, and violence. This has been a fascinating conversation. I know we're going to have more conversations like this because the January 6th committee hearings are still ongoing. Yes. And I hear the Secret Service is coming to testify next. And I'm like, ooh, let's see what they have to say. So I know we will continue this conversation, but thank you, Dr. Angie.
Thank you.
Before we go, tell us where we can find you. Tell us about your practice, what you have going on. Tell us about your books and your music.
Thank you for asking.
You're welcome.
Well, I can be found on all the socials, as you say, all the socials, Facebook, Instagram. I always forget to mention LinkedIn as well. YouTube. It's either Angela Celeste May, like my name right there, or Dr. Angela Celeste May. So you can find me on all those places. On the music side, you can also find me at Reverb Nation. / Angela Celeste May. On the music side, I haven't been doing as much. I've been doing some teaching, as I mentioned before. I'm doing some writing I'm excited about because I've got some projects going. So I haven't been doing as much musically. I stay plugged in musically, but just in terms of performing and stuff, I haven't done as much this past year. There will be more to come as certain other things are winding down. But musically, my company is Celeste Productions. You can find some of my the music from my last 2 albums on Reverb Nation. You can also get my album Reintroducing the Lady from iTunes, Amazon. Let's see what else. YouTube. All of those things are music stuff. So YouTube, largely music, where I give vocal quick tips and information about singing techniques and genres of music, how to recognize what's the difference between R&B and jazz. What's the difference? So I've got all that going. I have a request from one of my subscribers. I've got a couple of them I've got to do next. And I'm excited to do. I haven't gotten to it. It has to do with soul music, talk about that genre and how that differs. So those things, but look for stuff a little bit later in the year. I'll have something to say about some announcements about music. Thank you. My book, which is Freedom. What is the experience? Red. My mom's favorite color. What is the experience of living without negative self-imposed limitations? You can pick this book up also from Amazon, barnesandnoble.com. It's out here. Just type in my name, Dr. Angela Celeste May, in the book. And this is a book in which I did some research. I did interviews with people from lots of different backgrounds, small group of people. And we were talking about how they went from being stuck in their lives in a lot of different ways, emotionally stuck, stuck in their personal relationships, career, whatever the case, in their personal growth, and the steps for them to get to the point of feeling free from those things. And 7 main themes came out of that. And it's been, the lessons that they shared are so universal that I think so many of us can learn from them. So there have been a number of people who have found this book to really be life-changing and helpful for them. So I encourage you to check it out and get your own copy. It comes in it's on a Kindle. It's also soft and hardcover. In terms of psychologically speaking, A.M. Associates Incorporated, that's my company with my sister. We do counseling, consulting. My sister is Michelle May, Michelle Ann May. She's a licensed counselor. And we do counseling, consulting, and coaching. And on the therapy side, my sister is doing therapy, largely telehealth, but also a little bit in person here in Southeast Michigan. And we have different coaching programs going on. We just ended a cohort of our Women's Power Coaching Group, Mastermind. So we do one in the fall and one for like 8 weeks spread out every other week. And then we do one in the springtime. So the next one will be in fall. We always do them virtually. And it's just been really, it has taking these powerful women who with their companies and businesses or whatever it is that they're doing and help them just really get to the next level. Our clients are international business women who are doing amazing things with their companies. And Michelle and I have just been honored to help coach them on their way. So we have that coaching group. My sister does a retreat for creatives because we're both musicians, so creative. She does that typically at the beginning of the year. So we have different offerings. We do personal coaching as well, and I do consulting with different businesses, just depending on what they're needing. My coaching group, which I'm also very, very excited about, is my men's stress management for Black men, also virtual. And I'm going to I'm taking a break for the summer. I'm going to do it again in the fall. So there'll be marketing for that. But look on the socials for marketing for all of that stuff and information about it. Our website is amaassociates.com. So you can find out more about, all the different stuff that we're doing where that's concerned. And I have one consulting thing coming up on July 11th, Monday, July 11th. So if you go to my Facebook page, you will see it. And that is, I'm doing a virtual stress workshop from 6 to 7:30. And it's for recognizing what stress really is and how to handle it. And then specifically, we're also going to be talking about how women and men differ in the way that they perceive and deal with stress, and also stress specifically for Black folks, how some of those issues too. So I've got that coming up, and I'm doing some other things. I help people with, I'm an editor as well. So, I help people with their books. I've got another book I'm working on for someone else and helping them with it. So I always have stuff. I got stuff going on, but thank you for asking. So that's what I've got going at the moment. So, and I just wound down teaching. So teaching in the classroom, just wound that down. So teach psychology as well. So
amazing.
Oh. Yes.
Go.
I was gonna. The Michigan Health Michigan Health Council. On which I'm a trustee. We do a lot to support people who are in the professions of health, and that's across all kinds of it. So that's dentistry, osteopathy, nursing, psychology. All across. And one of the things that I love about the Michigan Health Council is that we go everywhere from graduate level, supporting people who are professionals, employers, what do they need? But we're really about, we do a lot, even going down to like first grade, second grade, encouraging K through 12 students, kids, college, all of that to get into consider health, different aspects of health for their profession. So we're working right now on filling a gap with middle school, doing more with encouraging middle school kids to consider fields of health, including psychology. So I'm excited about that work. And one other thing too, I started Michigan Health Council, this year, and I also started in the fall, this past fall. I'm on the drug youth prevention advisory board for Detroit youth.
Okay.
So we do things with the community for encouraging young people not to get involved with drugs at all and alcohol and any of that kind of stuff. So I'm just excited to lend my part, and of course doing things with the community and doing that through my sorority as well. So fun thing.
Excellent.
Lots going on.
Dr. Angie, we are so proud of you for all the things that you do. And we are so blessed by your presence. You give us knowledge and expertise and wonderful advice on our show once a month. So thank you for being on the Kim B. Davis Show.
Thank you for having me. It's my honor.
Thank you. See you next month.
Definitely.
Thank you guys for tuning into the Kim B. Davis Show. You know, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, everywhere on social media. And it's Kimberly Batchelor Davis. Batchelor is BATCHELOR. You can see this show at youtube.com/Kimberly Batchelor Davis. You can hear this show on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, and Wisdom. You can learn more about me as an author at www.kimbdavis.com. Thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you'll tune in on our next episode. And as always, remember, be magnificent.